30 flights of stairs for nothing but a class of monkeys. What do they think I am? A teacher? Not a zookeeper? The children looked around, didn't know what to say. Todd scratched his head. "Oh, I'm sorry," said Mrs. Jules. "Please don't get me wrong. I have nothing against monkeys. I really do. Why, I'm sure I can play all kinds of monkey games." What are you talking about?" asked Todd. Do you know a talking, what do you know? A talking monkey. Tomorrow I'll bring you a banana." "My name is Todd," said Todd. The children were flabbergasted. They all raised their hands. "I'm sorry," said Mrs. Jules, "but I don't have enough bananas for all of you. I didn't expect this. Next week I'll bring a whole bushel." "I don't want a banana," said Calvin. "I'm not a monkey." "What would you like, a peanut?" asked Mrs. Jules. "I think I might have a bag of peanuts in my purse." Wait a second. Yes, here it is." "Thanks," said Calvin. Calvin liked peanuts. Allison stood up. "I'm not a monkey," she said. "I'm a girl. My name is Allison, and so is everybody else." Mrs. Jules was shocked. Do you tell me? Are you telling me that every monkey in here is named Allison?" "No," said Jenny. "She means we're all children. My name is Jenny." "No," said Mrs. Jules. "You're much too cute to be children." Jason raised his hand. Yes, said Mrs. Jules. "The chimpanzee in the red shirt?" "My name is Jason," said Jason, "and I'm not a chimpanzee." "You're too small to be a gorilla," said Mrs. Jules. "I'm a boy," said Jason. You're not a monkey." "You're not a monkey?" asked Mrs. Jules. "No," said Jason. And the rest of the class are not monkeys either." And so the rest of the class are not monkeys either?" asked Mrs. Jules. "No," said Allison. "That is what we've been trying to tell you." "Are you sure?" asked Miss Jules. "We'd know if we were monkeys, wouldn't we?" asked Calvin. I don't know," said Mrs. Jules. "Do monkeys know that they're monkeys?" "I don't know," said Allison. "I'm not a monkey." "No, I suppose you're not," said Mrs. Jules. Okay, in that case, we have lots of work to do. Reading, writing, subtraction, addition, spelling. Everyone take out a piece of paper. We're going to have a test now." Jason tapped Todd on the shoulder. He said, Do you want to know something? I liked it better when she thought we were monkeys." "I know," said Todd. "I guess that means she won't bring me a banana." "There will be no talking in this class," said Mrs. Jules. She wrote Todd's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Chapter 3. Joe. Joe had curly hair, but didn't know how much hair he had. He couldn't count that. He couldn't count that high. In fact, he couldn't count at all. When all the children went to recess, Mrs. Jules told Joe to wait inside. "Joe," she said, "how much hair do you have?" Joe shrugged his shoulders. "A lot." A lot, he said. "A lot," he answered. "But how much, Joe?" asked Mrs. Jules. "Enough to cover my head," Joe answered. "Joe, you're going to have to learn how to count," said Mrs. Jules. "But Mrs. Jules, I already know how to count," said Joe. "Let me go to recess." "First count to 10, said Mrs. Jules. Joe counted to 10. 6, 8, 12, 1, 5, 2, 7, 11, 3, 10. "No, Joe, that is wrong," said Mrs. Jules. "No, it isn't," said Joe. "I counted until I got to 10. "But You were wrong, said Mrs. Jules. I'll prove it to you. She put 5 pencils on his desk. How many pencils are there, Joe? Joe counted the pencils. 4, 6, 1, 9, 5. There are 5 pencils, Mrs. Jules. That's wrong, said Mrs. Jules. How many pencils are there? Asked Joe. 5, said Mrs. Jules. That's what I said Joe. May I go to recess now? No, said Mrs. Jules. You gotta answer it right. But you answered it right, but you counted it wrong. But you counted it wrong. You were just lucky, she said. She put 8 potatoes on his desk. How many potatoes, Joe? Joe counted the potatoes. 7, 5, 3, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. There are 8 potatoes, Mrs. Jules. No, there are 8 potatoes, said Mrs. Jules. But that's what I said Joe. May I go to recess now? No, you're going to learn the right way to count. But you're counting the wrong way. She put 3 books on his desk. Count the books, Joe. Joe counted the books. 1,000, 1,000,000, 3. 3, Mrs. Jules. Correct, said Mrs. Jules. May I go to recess now? Joe asked. No, said Mrs. Jules. May I have a potato? Asked Joe. No, listen to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, said Mrs. Jules. Now you say it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, said Joe. Very good, said Mrs. Jules. She put 6 erasers on his desk. Now count the erasers, Joe. Just the way I showed you. Joe counted the erasers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10, Mrs. Jules. No, said Mrs. Jules. Didn't I count right? Asked Joe. Yes, you counted right, but you got the wrong answer, Mrs. Jules said. This doesn't make any sense, said Joe. When I count the wrong way, I get the right answer. When I count the right way, I get the wrong answer. Mrs. Jules hit her head 5 times on the wall. How many times did I hit my head against the wall? She asked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You hit your head against the wall 10 times, said Joe. No, said Mrs. Jules. 4, 6, 1, 9, 5. You hit your head 5 times against the wall. Mrs. Jules shook her head no and said, yes, that is right. The bell rang, and all the children came back from recess. The fresh air had made them very excited, and they were all laughing and shouting. Oh, darn, said Joe. I missed recess. Hey, Joe, where were you? Asked John. You missed a great game of kickball. I kicked a home run, said Todd. What's wrong with you, Joe? Asked Joy. Nothing, said Joe. Mrs. Jules was just trying to teach me how to count. Joy laughed. You mean you don't know how to count? Counting is easy, said Marisha. Now, said Mrs. Jules. What's easy for you may not be easy for Joe. What's easy for Joe may not be easy for you. Nothing's easy for Joe, said Marisha. He's stupid. I can beat you up, said Joe. Try it, said Marisha. That will be enough of that, said Mrs. Jules. She wrote Marisha's name on the blackboard under the word discipline. Joe put his head in between the 8 potatoes and the 6 erasers. You don't feel bad, Joe, said Mrs. Jules. I just don't get it, said Joe. I'll never learn to count. Sure you will, said Mrs. Jules. One day, it'll just come to you. You'll just wake up one morning and suddenly you'll be able to count. Joe asked, if all I have to do is wake up, what am I doing? Why am I at school? School just speeds things up, said Mrs. Jules. Without school, you might have to take another 70 years before, it might take another 70 years before you wake up and just know how to count. By the time I may have no hair, but by the time that comes, I may have no hair on top of my head. Said Joe. Exactly, said Mrs. Jules. That is why you're going to school. When Joe woke up the next morning, he knew how to count. He had 55,600 hairs on his head. They were all curly. Chapter 4. Cherie. Cherie had long eyelashes. She weighed only 49 pounds. She always wore a big red and blue overcoat with a hood. The overcoat weighed 35 pounds. The red part weighed 15 pounds, and the blue part weighed 15 pounds. And the hood weighed 5 pounds. Her eyelashes weighed a pound and a half. She sat next to the window in Mrs. Jules' class. She spent a lot of time just staring out the window. Mrs. Jules didn't mind. Mrs. Jules said that a lot of people learn the best